Welcome back to G Brands. I'm Andy Rowe. I'm joined in studio by World Cup winning Wallaby Jeremy Paul. How are you, mate?
Mate, I am the best. What a weekend of rugby.
All right, we'll get to it. Justin Marshall over there in South Africa. How are you, buddy?
Look, I'm good, lads. You're looking mightily cozy there. It's been an awesome week here in South Africa. Epic test match, but more importantly, just great to have the All Blacks back on South African soil. It was an exciting week. I've had an arduous week. Had to suffer defeat on the golf course to John Smith. Now, this guy, when he plays golf, he is usually off a 20 handicap, and he shot the house down, absolutely pulled my pants down. And the funniest thing is, like, if you can imagine that Juan Miguel Jimenez, remember him? He's the Spaniard guy that walks around and smokes a cigar while he's playing golf.
Yes.
That's John Smith. So honestly, we're on about the sixth hole, and I look across and he's walking up to the green, and he's got this big stogie in his mouth, and there's smoke coming out of him. And he just, a couple of times he's hitting his shot with the cigar in his mouth. Other times he's just putting it down while he's putting on the green. I'm like, mate, etiquette here.
Mate,
it's been a good week.
He must be $140. Like he's enjoyed retirement. I played against John Smith since we were 19 years of age.
Really?
Yeah, we played under 21s, the tournament against each other, and then obviously played throughout with Sharks, Brumbies, and with the box. But yeah, he looks like he's enjoyed retirement a bit.
Oh yeah, no, he's still quite active. He gets on the cycle a lot, and the good thing about losing golf over here is that the power of your own dollar. So when we're talking dropping 500 rand, it's like, $5. It's like, thanks for the game, mate.
Mate, there's a common theme here, though, mate. Cully also said you like to donate money to him too. Like maybe you should give up playing golf for cash.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's time for me to reevaluate what golf is actually doing for me, because it's certainly not making me any money. That's for sure.
Marshy, set the scene for us. You were at Ellis Park. How good. It was incredible on TV. Just being there must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was. Like, the thing about Ellis Park is when you're driving up to that stadium, you certainly know that you're in a sort of hostile, feverish environment. And even the players, when they arrived into Ellis Park, and Scott Robertson was being interviewed before the game, he basically said, man, you just you don't experience anything like it. That last sort of 150, 200 metres into Ellis Park where you then drop in under the stadium. He said it's something else, and it was, because there's just a sea of green jerseys everywhere, but they just love the All Blacks being in town. So the expectation, the excitement for the week, but also a little bit of nervousness, because they were very aware that the All Blacks have bitten them many times when possibly being underdogs going into a test match, and certainly that was the case at the weekend with the Springboks in such great form. But they also recognised that they hadn't beaten the All Blacks at Ellis Park, their home, for 10 years. So there was kind of whilst there's a feverish sort of excitement and looking forward to the game, there's this nervous energy as well. And look, it's the area which we discussed has disintegrated a little bit, but once you get inside that stadium and you walk out into the middle of Ellis Park, man, I have to say there's nothing else like that atmosphere. It is absolutely top notch, and I think the test match lived up to the hype and the expectation, and equally the crowd were in it right up until the 80th minute because they had to be.
What was it like for you on the sideline, Marshy? Because was there something going on with your mic? What was going on?
Yes.
Were you smoking a stogie?
I wasn't smoking a stogie. I tell you what, I felt like I needed something else after 10 minutes of frustration. But sometimes that just happens with television. You get technical issues, and that was happening with my microphone. So what the irony of that was we had to try and fix it. So after about 25 minutes, we decided to try and get it appropriately fixed at half time. But what I happened to do when I was going through this, because I had to go quiet for 20 minutes of the game, was noticed Andrew Mertens standing in the tunnel watching the game. And I actually had a spare seat beside me, so I said to Mertens, come over here. So he came and sat down in the spare seat with me, and we basically sat there the entire game, even when my microphone was fixed, and we've got the technical issues all resolved. He just stayed there and watched the game with me, basically off the monitor. But there were a few issues early on in the test match, but they came right.
I was just going to say, mate, there were technical issues, obviously, with your call on TV, but surely there were some technical issues in the game itself, like the controversy. Mate, I was screaming at the TV at, I think it was like 2:30 in the morning in Australian time. We can't get around it. We got to talk about, obviously, and it's not about bagging the referee. Please, because I've got some ideas I'd love, sort of run by you with respects to other codes and what they do with referees. But that first try, I mean, I know, having played in South Africa many, many times, 20 odd times, if it was reversed and the All Blacks were scoring a try and it wasn't a try, that would have been played on the screen over and over, and the stadium would have booed so loud the referee would have turned around. And you actually saw players, because Sasha didn't make the kick right because of the time, but you actually saw players run early to get to the referee, and I think the water boy did too. So we've got to get this, mate. Got to get this out of the way.
It came up on the big screen. Basically, as Sasha Feinberg Ngomazulu was about to take his conversion. And I think he recognised it as well, that he saw that particular replay just before he was about to kick, that there was something wrong with the try. So he tried to hasten up the whole process, and then it all just became really, really messy, because you're absolutely right. All Black players and some of their support staff started walking towards Sasha where he was about to kick, because they'd seen it on the screen. It was quite clearly that Umbanambi dropped it. Like, there's no doubt that happened. But obviously the synergy between the TMO and the referee broke down for some reason, and what we didn't get was the correct decision. Now, look, that happens in the game, and I can feel that All Black fans are really aggrieved about it, and so they should be. But what you've got to do when something like that happens to you in sport, and any sport, is reset. I thought the All Blacks did reset really well. They knew that they'd been robbed to a degree, but that didn't distract them from their task on the day. You go back and you say, well, if you take 5 points off the score, it's a different result. But at the end of the day, I think what they did, was commendable. They just recognised it for what it was. Look, I was there, and you're dead right, JP. I was there the year that it happened to the All Blacks, that it was in the dying moments of the game, around halfway, and an All Black player was injured, and the referee hadn't seen anything. But at the breakdown before the All Black player got injured, the pictures started to come up on the big screen of a high shot. And I can't quite remember who the player was. I think it was Liam Messam, who hit a Springbok player high, and literally they put it on the screen about 6, 7, 8 times
Yes.
until finally the referee saw it. Now, it wouldn't have happened to then transpire into a penalty for the All Blacks if the All Black player wasn't injured, but he was getting attended to, so that gave time for everybody to go, oh yeah, okay, we better have a look at that. Result was that the South Africans got awarded a penalty for a high shot, kicked the 3 points, and won the test match. So, unfortunately, that didn't happen for the All Blacks. They didn't get that sort of bounce of the ball, so to speak.
Yeah, look, I was. It was Brumby's game, actually. Lynden Bray, remember Lynden Bray? He's actually the CEO of Tasman, I believe, and obviously an avid listener and watcher of G-Bra ANZ. But I remember we were in Canberra, and they put a little chip through, and I touched the ball. I pressed the ball down in the in goal, like pressure on it. And the Stormers player, like in a millisecond, dived on the ball, and Lynden Bray went, penalty, like try. And I went straight up to him, mate, I forced it. Have a look on the TV. And he goes, nah, it's a try. And then it came up on the screen where it clearly shows that I'd pressed it. And we actually ran into each other the next morning at the airport, because he was flying back to NZ. We were taking off to South Africa, and he goes, should have checked it. I should have checked that. And I said, mate, I told you. You're going to be wrong, mate. But look, and look, we took it on the chin as well. And you got to take these things on the chin. For me, though, we're so pedantic over head high shots, which we should be. but we've slowed the game up because of it. We've then brought in rules about time, because the games were going far too long, like conversions, all this sort of stuff. And I think to miss an era like that, personally for me, it's more about the spectacle, and I get it. You get those 50-50 calls, but when you're talking about technology, for me, like with refereeing, I think they should be paid more for starters. Like I think the top 10 referees in the world should be on a far higher base and be getting huge match payments. If you're refereeing the best game in the world, which was the Box and All Blacks game, right? It should be like a $10,000 payment or something like that, so we can encourage the top referees to be on their game each week, as well as create pathways for younger kids to come through and want to referee, because it can then actually be an avenue for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult, isn't it? Because the way that the game's being officiated now, the TMO has, I think, over impact on the game, and that's what we're trying to extricate from it, that the referee hopefully can control the majority of the game, and that the TMO comes in for foul play. When there's been genuine foul play, that he can come in. I don't like the fact that the TMO can come in when he's seen a knock-on or a forward pass, something like that. Again, that's something that you used to just live with in the game and got on with it. But when the TMO is at his worst, he's coming in constantly and basically he's refereeing the game, overriding the referee and what the referee's seeing. So the biggest problem in it is exactly what you're talking about, JP. The referees, if they don't pick up on these things that happen in the game, then when they go to their reviews, they get critiqued to within an inch of their life, and then they start losing test matches. So I think the more control that they get and the ability for World Rugby to have some leniency and just go, you know what, there was a knock-on in the 53rd minute, but that was one hell of a test match that we saw. And did it affect the game? Probably not. Both teams just got on with it and saw it for what it was, and the defence adapted and the attack adapted, and the game rolled on. And if they're not then, like I said, basically fighting for their life to get another refereeing position, then I think the game will be in a better place. So look, again, I have to reinforce, I totally concur that at the weekend, the All Blacks certainly were on the wrong end of a poor decision, which was costly. It cost them 5 points. But by no means at all at that stadium and from that moment on did it affect the quality, the tempo, the pace, the physicality of the game. Like, the game lived up to its expectations and the players delivered massively. Honestly, they just got on with it. And you're always going to review it after the game, and people are going to feel that it didn't have the right result simply because of a bad decision. I think we've got to try and look past that and look at the full context of the game. Anything could have happened after that moment. Like at the end of the day, if that's a knock on, it's a 5 metre scrum, and the All Blacks could have turned the ball over off the scrum. Anything could have happened. So look, I just think what we've got to basically be excited about is the quality of rugby that we got from those two sides.
And I think if you're talking about the game in that light, on how good it was and how much it delivered, Andrew Brace needs to be given a pat on the back in some respects for that as well. Did you see, as far as the All Blacks, Marshy, we've talked about their evolution under this new coaching group. Did you see anything new in particular that we hadn't seen in previous games? Because we've been looking for that, haven't we?
Oh, we have been. It's probably the most excited I've been about the All Blacks in quite a long time. Like, the fact that they did not get flustered, they did not get suffocated by the Springboks defence. They found space on the outsides. Caleb Clark running in tries. I thought that was probably the best performance that Damien McKenzie's put in the number 10 jersey. And look, he didn't have a massive amount of razzle-dazzle about it, did it? It didn't have that Damien McKenzie breaking 2-3 tackles, going lateral, huge counter-attack. It was that he was pulling the trigger and controlling the game perfectly. He sat deep enough that he didn't get spooked by defenders who were on him the minute he got the ball. When he needed to flatten up, he flattened up. That little show and go that he did when Jesse Creel came at him really quickly, that was perfect. He could have panicked then and let the pass go, which could have resulted in an intercept. He just did a little fake pump, and then he hit the player on the outside, and then the All Blacks are running in a try to Caleb Clark. I felt that they balanced their game out really well. Their kicking game was better. They played in the right areas. And again, their attack showed the ability to constantly make line breaks and run in tries. They scored more tries than the Springboks on the day, so that is quite clearly the direction that the All Blacks need to keep trending towards, because they've got the players now, we saw at the weekend, to be able to execute and for us to have that evolution that we've been all asking for. So it was kind of weird standing there in that stadium after the game, because I was deflated that we'd lost, because we were in the contest and it was a game we probably should have won. But equally, I was really excited about where this team can go and the type of rugby I'd just witnessed them play.
Can I just ask also, the rush defence, the umbrella defence, the Springboks defence, essentially, we weren't smothered by them like we were by England. What was it that the All Blacks were doing differently, or was it the defence different, or what was the change that actually allowed us to play a bit more free-flowing?
They just had multiple options. So when you've got multiple options off your playmaker and you've got a rush defence coming at you, it'll make the defence hesitate. When you've got an inside player coming and working on defenders, which Will Jordan and Caleb Clark were doing when it wasn't on their wing, they were offering opportunities for Damien McKenzie or for TJ Perenara for them to be considered as ball carriers. They had a flat runner going hard at the line, which again makes defenders stop and basically hesitate because they have to, and slow their foot speed. And then equally, Damien McKenzie's depth and his perception of where defenders were coming at him was so much better, so that when defenders did bounce out of line and try and basically target a runner or target him or get in the eye line of the passer, they were deep enough and players were then responding off him that player didn't impact them. So they were able to find the space on the outside. Didn't even really see them have to cross kick much because they were so well in tuned with having multiple options that were that defenders were having to consider. So yeah, they did a brilliant job of it. They've obviously thought about it, and it's probably where they've been wanting to get to. And they worked their way through the English series, recognised they weren't quite right, but they got it right at the weekend.
Classic back too, didn't talk the piggies up. I thought the forwards laid an incredible platform, mate. Like that first sort of 4 or 5 minutes, they did a great turnover, and I think they did something like 16, 18 paces or something, something crazy like that with a cross. But I think Scott Barrett's return, just the hard yards.
Tupuai, Tamati Williams.
Yeah, just those hard yards right in the middle. I thought Ethan Blackadder had another great performance. I thought Sam Cane defensively was just outstanding, but didn't see him carry the ball much. But when you got that brick wall and your forwards put their hands up and take the tough yards, mate, it inspires the rest of the team. And mate, also too, right, the line out more. I was going to ask you, right, Cody Taylor's first try. And then it was about the 64th minute, and they got a penalty, kicked down, and I was thinking, here we go, 15 metres out. Yep, they're going to line out more here. And they did this trick play, where it went to the back, they threw down to Artie Severe, and I was like, no, what are you doing? You've got the blueprint there. It was 27-17 too at the time, and I thought they made a poor decision then, but I thought the forwards were outstanding, mate.
I certainly, I agree with you, and it's really unique. Well, it's very good that you brought that point up, JP, because I think probably some of the decisions they made in the last 15 minutes ultimately cost them the test match. When they boil down their first 60, 65 minutes, I think they'll be really happy with where they were in the game, and at that stage they were leading the test match. They led the test match all the way through, obviously up until around the 70th minute when Williams scored, the halfback. But I think some of the things that they did in those micro minutes of the test match, they will review and go, we need to be better there, and we need to be in a better headspace. And that's where that bomb squad makes such a difference, because what South Africa are not doing is bringing on green players. They're bringing on a plethora of experience. Honestly, with you bring the likes of Malcolm Marx and Quagga Smith off the bench, these are guys that have played, many test matches. So I think they had impact, but equally they add this experience of how to basically finish a game, and when they're fighting for the game, they stay composed. They're not rattled. And look, even like the bomb squad, like I thought, man, this is going to be interesting when Kurtley Orenser went off.
Yes,
because all of a sudden they only then had one reserve back, which was Williams, the scrum half. So, they do back themselves big time. But you do make a good point. The line-out drive had worked well early in the game, and you wonder whether or not the All Blacks at times just probably didn't keep as composed as what they could have to basically grind out a good win in those last 15 minutes.
Also, their discipline too, right? Like going into that, I think it was when Offa got sin-binned, which I got to ask you this question, mate. Like that Offa sin-binning, that actually wasn't a sin-binning. He broke through. There were 3 players at front, and he actually broke through 2 of them. And unfortunately for him, one of the South African players fell to the ground. So it looked like he came around the side. But they'd been infringing. If it wasn't him, it was going to be someone else, right? Like, so fair play. Like they were 13-5, I think, in terms of penalties conceded. Surely discipline, like, because when a team's under pressure, they infringe. You know better than anyone at the Crusaders. You bastards were the best at it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we were very good at it, Jason.
Yes. Mate, I wish we had yellow cards.
Like Richie McCaw. Mate, the least penalised man in world rugby, like somehow. He just looked up with those soft brown eyes at referees, and they went, "Oh no, you weren't. There wasn't a penalty, Richie. No, Super Richie, definitely not." But
Sir Richie,
I certainly feel, Sir Richie. I look at that. That was a team penalty for Offa Tuangafasi, wasn't it? The fact that they'd been infringing in that zone too much, and that'll be another issue for the All Blacks to look at. The penalty count I think was 14-5. Against them. So it showed how well disciplined the Springboks were, but equally how the All Blacks were on, again, the wrong side of the referee. And when people talk about it, I haven't seen, because I was travelling yesterday to Cape Town, I haven't seen a lot of the media and basically what's been said publicly also about the game. I haven't seen that from a New Zealand perspective. I've seen it from a South African one. So I'm sure that there's probably been a little bit of controversy around the refereeing, but I don't feel that Andrew Brace did that bad a job. I think we had a great test match, and I don't remember too many of his penalties that weren't unjustified. So for some reason or another, the All Blacks just didn't have as good a discipline on the day. I don't know what you guys feel about that or what's been said.
No, look, I think they were definitely deserved with respects to the penalty count. Lot of infringements under pressure. Like definitely, those little offsides, infringements in the ruck. I was gonna ask you though. Sorry about the refereeing. Is like you look at other codes, cricket, rugby league, where they can do a captain's challenge. Like I think Offa's definitely wasn't a sin-binning because he did the right thing. He came through the middle, but that could be a situation where a captain could throw out a challenge and go, because there was another part in the game where Delandy did his first jackal, right? And you could clearly see his hands were on the ground, and there's actually a couple of All Blacks pointing, going, hands on the ground, hands on the ground. So I love the captain's challenge. I think in rugby league it changed the game with respects to the momentum, and if you get that challenge right, it's like a big swing, man. I'd love to see it in rugby union.
Yeah, look, that's a really good point, actually. Good to see that you've done some homework for one.
Stop it! I watched the game.
Into the show. No. I actually agree with that. And I think rugby league's probably got the right balance where the captain can come in for challenging basically a try being scored or a penalty, but they can't come in for like a knock-on or a forward pass.
Yes,
maybe they can for a knock-on, but if it's in the motion of scoring or something like that, I think the captain's challenge needs to be like for big moments. If we're going to bring it into rugby, and it would be when you feel that, like for example, at the weekend with Umbanambi, that Scott Barrett could go to the referee and say, "Hang on, we don't feel that he scored that try," and they can come in, or. Equally, there's been a penalty, like you mentioned, that you don't feel was justified, but I don't feel that we want the captains having too much input into the refereeing and being able to come in for things like knock-ons and forward passes. You've just got to wear that and get on with it. So I think it's valid if we bring it in the right manner.
Imagine if TJ Perenara was your captain.
Oh mate, that's just dirty little halfback pests, right? Like, I played with one of the greatest in George Gregan, mate. He was like, particularly South African referees. George, shut up! Like, I'll send you off. Like, mate, what is the mate? Because you're one of those little pesty halfbacks. What's the fine line here? Because I watched on the coverage. Sorry, before you say that, I watched on the coverage. TJ Perenara started screaming at that ref 2 minutes into the game. Like, they're slowing our ball down. Like, you could see it before his penalty. And then, like, when he got penalised, he's chasing the referee to the ruck.
He's got it in his face. He's gone full
screaming.
football screaming in his face.
Bro, what's the guidelines here from a halfback's point of view on how you control a ref?
What advice would you be giving?
Yeah, well, look, I think probably I learnt under one of the best, because you mentioned George Gregan, and George Gregan refereed 139 tests for the Wallabies.
Yes, he did.
Look, he was the same. Like, what George was doing was he was basically narrating the game. So when he was getting to breakdowns, either with or without the ball, you could hear him saying, "They're not rolling away. He's off his feet. Keep them back. They're not onside." So he was basically. That's the way he was talking. You know, he was pointing out things that were visible in front of him.
Yeah.
And it's just what the referee chooses to listen to or not. And that's very much what TJ's doing. You can see him saying, you know, he's off his feet, he's on our side, not rolling away. But he's kind of screaming it. Like, Aaron Smith was the same. Like, Aaron Smith, absolutely, he was of the same manner. Like, he would be actually yelling, like shouting at times. So, look, I was a little like that, but to be perfectly honest, I just didn't have the energy to be doing that. Like, these guys, they have to be super fit. Like, I'm getting to a breakdown. I'm absolutely rooted, and I don't want to commentate what's happening in front of me. I just want to be able to fulfill my core role. So, yeah, look, I feel, look, it can work one or two ways. If a referee feels that what a halfback like TJ is saying is actually valid, he'll take it into account. If he gets annoyed with him because he starts doing it, like you say, in the second minute, and every breakdown he's shouting at the ref, then the referee will probably just switch off and choose to ignore him, which is counterproductive. I think you've got to pick your moments. If you pick your moments and they're really clear, and that's when you have input to the referee, I think that's macro managing the referee throughout the 80 minutes. If you're at it the whole game, the referee, I can tell you now, will just get pissed off, and he'll choose to ignore you.
What do you think the All Blacks need to do going into this next test to solve the last 15, 20-minute riddle that they haven't been able to solve in the last three tests that they've played in?
Well, they're only going to learn from what happened at Ellis Park. Now let's face it, like I said, it's not matchable to do what the Springboks are doing, because we just don't have the experience. So the Springboks changed 5 players in the 48th minute. 5 forwards. They got the complete front row, 2 loose forwards, and all of a sudden, what you're presented with in terms of on defence is completely different, because you got different ball carriers and different sets of bodies and skills. The All Blacks didn't make any substitutes until just after the 60th minute, I think it was. So their mindset's completely different, and maybe they've got to rethink their strategy in terms of what they're going to do with their bench to combat what the Springboks do, because ultimately, when the Springboks bomb squad came on, that's where we started to lose the test match. We were winning the test match up until that point, but then their dynamic changed the game, whereas our substitutes, yes, I'm not saying they played poorly, but they're just not as experienced, are they? And we gave away discipline penalty errors and probably didn't create enough, whereas they became even more creative and more combative by bringing that bomb squad on. So I think that's an area we have to think about. I did question whether Razor should have matched the Springboks and gone for a 6-2 split before the game, because I think when I looked at the balance, he went for Talia, Anton Leonard-Brown, and Cortez Ratama, and I thought to myself, you've now got such multi-skilled players across the back line. Beauden Barrett can play anywhere. Damien McKenzie can play anywhere. Rico Kiwani can shift to the wing. And with Anton Leonard-Brown able to play from 12 out, you could have survived just with having Anton Leonard-Brown and Cortez Ratama a specialist because, not many rugby players in the world, in fact, hardly any can play that specialist position of 9. Like, it's one of the hardest positions in the game. You have to be really, really intelligent, super good looking.
Why didn't you play there, JP?
It's a specialist position that is just so complicated. So you have to have that good-looking, intelligent player on the reserve bench, but then you can just have one other back. And I felt that that's possibly an opportunity that they need to think about because they have done what Scott Robertson likes, players that are able to play multiple positions. So why not utilise that? And then you've got that extra forward to take on the Springboks bomb squad.
Look, for me, I thought their kicking accuracy was better, but however, Caleb Clark, his aerial skills were amazing. Like every time the ball was kicked up, but it just wasn't deep enough. Like I thought, like in terms of that sort of territory. So I think kicking execution, like to see a little bit more cross kicking, even a little chip in behinds. Like we've seen that in previous tests where it just gives a little bit of puts a bit of question in the mind of the defence. Definitely exits. I thought after every time the All Blacks put points on, they literally turned the ball over.
The exits were poor.
You've got to be able to exit. Like you've got to be able to get to that solid catch, either box with TJ or at least be able to put the ball downtown a long, long way, particularly with altitude. And again, their kicking execution. Like unfortunately, Bodie Barrett kicked a couple out on the full where he took it back into the 22. So I think just little like not major things, but just little tinking with respects to execution. And then obviously as a team. I think the word of the week will be disciplined. Like you just can't give away 14 penalties, man. Like it's too much because, from a defensive aspect, like when you take out all the defensive points, right? Like it's actually a super defensive effort. I thought Sam Cane, wow, what a beast back in his first, start for the All Blacks. He just iced everyone. So not a lot to tinker, like to be able to sort of get that win, but yeah, definitely exits.
JP, that shit sandwich didn't taste too bad for Joe Smith on the weekend, did it? Marshy, did you watch that?
Mate.
Did you watch that from South Africa?
Yes, I actually did. I tuned into the game here in South Africa from my NordVPN, which I downloaded.
Good segue.
So I was able to, you're able to watch sport anywhere in the world, which is amazing. What an incredible app. So, I was able to tune into the Wallabies' dramatic win over Argentina, Andy, and thank you very much for sending me the information on how to do it because as intelligent as I am, these things can be complicated. So can you tell me, everybody out there, how they also get the NordVPN, please? Because I think that's important information to know.
I can, and I'll also tell you how you can get a discount off your NordVPN plan. Just go to nordvpn.com/gbrands. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. There is no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee as well. And the link is in the podcast episode as well. So just scroll down on whatever device you're listening to on. You'll get that link. Click, get your discount.
I'm going to set that up.
Awesome.
Thanks, NordVPN. Thank you, NordVPN.
The game.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about, the winners this weekend.
You what? 2 hands on the Bledisloe already, JP? After 1 win away?
I tell you what. If we win again this weekend, we've got a couple of fingers on it. We're slightly
I hope you're talking about the Bledisloe Cup, mate.
We are. We're talking about the Bledisloe. No, we're in reach of it, right? It's great to see that Joe Smith obviously watches and listens to the show. Mate, there was so much to like about that performance. The Achilles heel, our kryptonite, the line-out Moal defence. We saw the Argentinians, the Pumas, score their first try, right? And I was sitting there watching because it was
rolled straight through.
Mate, it was 8:30 in the morning. I'm feeding my 16-month-old son, and I'm just sort of sitting there, and I was like, oh, no, here we go. Thinking, but then as the game went on, they started to get like on top of the Pumas line out more. And so I was thinking, oh, here we go. And then in the 64th minute, I think it was, Wallabies ahead by 17-16. Pumas kick into the sideline 5 metres out, and they go for a line out maul. And the Wallabies defended that maul like their life depended on it. You could see the intent. The intent was unbelievable. They then ended up, like, I think they gave a penalty a couple of phases later, and it showed the Pumas then took the points. Like, instead of, like, you could actually see the forwards' faces, like a couple of them actually turn around and go, what are we doing? Like, let's go again, let's attack again. But they took the point. So massive pat on the back, like, you know, from a confidence point of view, it's, you know, they filled up the belief cup like a little bit with that huge performance just in line-out defence.
Should we pig out a little bit on Moal line-out defence? Because you can see teams that are quite organised with it, like the All Blacks, and you can see teams that are getting better at it, like the Wallabies. But I watch a game and I wouldn't be able to tell you what people should or shouldn't be doing or where they should or shouldn't be. I'm going to Scooby-Doo.
Okay, well, let the good-looking bloke just stay quiet for a second. So, look, I'll let the piggy take this over. Okay, well, the first thing is, like, and actually we saw this in the Box and All Black game too, is when that jumper, like there was twice where the jumper was actually in the air. To me, that's a definite sign that they've gone early, right? You get the timing has to be to the microsecond with respects to that jumper hitting the ground. Then it's all about splitting those first three players. So from an attacking point of view, what you're trying to do as a lifter is you're trying to be able to close that gap between you and the jumper. And it's all about tightness, right? It's all about tightness, formation, and then syncing together and working as an eight. But defensively, what you're trying to do is split. So what we saw with the Wallabies, actually, interestingly, was the first three players in defence were actually binding up together. They were binding up together, like as in a front row going down in a scrum, and just smashing into that first three players. Because when you can split the front of them all, that's when basically you've destroyed them all. And because if a team can get those first, from an attacking point, gets those first three players, next two players in, recycle the ball back to the back, it's almost over. Like, it's very then difficult to defend. And then that's when you start dragging in, and we saw this in the Box game, is when you're getting the Artie Severes and the Sam Canes having to come into that line out more to defend, that's when you're in trouble. Like, you're in trouble then because... As a defender. Because you want your tight five or your tight six, because Ethan Blackadder is either defending in the air or he's going into that line out more. And look, and again, it's a bit like defence, it's attitude as well, right? Like, it's attitude, man. Like, you just got to rip in, like you really do. And the confidence, though, that, like, I saw with the Wallaby side and what the backs did, like after that, they took the points. Even though the Pumas went ahead, they went ahead like 19-17, and it was, heads didn't drop, man. They were like, yes, like we defended them all. Like, it was just like, man, it gives you, doesn't it give you confidence though as backs though, Marshy?
Yeah, it does, because that's an area where if you're not proficient and it's a weakness in your game, you know that any penalties that get kicked inside the 22 from 10 metres out, if you can't defend a rolling maul, then it's all over. You know, like, if you can't front up there and make sure that you're stopping the opposition from scoring points in that zone from a rolling maul, then it's going to be a disaster for you. I think back to the All Blacks game a few years ago against Italy, and Italy played outstanding, played out of their skins, frustrated the All Blacks, shut them down on the day with defence. Their attack was really good. They were in the fight, but they could not defend the rolling maul. Well, I think we scored 4 tries from rolling maul. It was their Achilles heel on the day. It's a classic example of, if you cannot front up and stop that at source, then you're going to leak points, and that's incredibly frustrating. As backs, obviously you can't do anything about it, but it technically, as JP talked his way through it quite rightly so, if you can fracture that maul and stop it at source straight away, then all of a sudden the pressure goes back on the opposition to try and either restart it or release the ball, and that gives you then the ability to stay in the fight. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I like the way Joe Schmidt is working his way through working this team out. Obviously, he's dealing with brand new players. He's dealing with players that have a different skill set than the ones he's used to dealing with in Ireland and in New Zealand. He has to work out how he pieces together that dynamic, and then also figures out the DNA of Australian rugby and how to get the best out of those players. And I think the test series that he's had, what he learnt out of playing against South Africa physically would have helped. And I thought you saw that physicality come in against Argentina, because, man, they're a physical side. And the Wallabies fronted up in that zone and were better in their body height in a lot of areas of that game, I thought. And again, the combination between the forwards and backs, it's still not quite clicking yet, but it's improving as they play together more, and as Joe Schmidt starts to work out which individuals are going to fit into the way he wants to play, but equally who are going to thrive under the game plan that he wants to play under. And I think he'll be that'll go a long way for their confidence winning a test match like that. Mate, you've been there, JP. Hell of a hard place to go, and when they get their tails up and particularly get in the lead over there, then their emotion just comes out of them. The crowd get behind them, start, ole, 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 ole. It's like, oh, shit, here we go. So to be able to stay in the fight and win those little battles that you're talking about, and then ultimately win the test match, that will be a huge boost confidence-wise for that side.
Yeah, mate, you're filling up the belief cup, right? Like it's because people will always comment and go, oh, they just got to believe more. Well, you can't. You've actually got to fill the belief cup, like with performances. Look, from an off-field point of view too, Marsh, remember going to Argentina and you're eating at midnight. Like that, like because everyone has siestas during the day.
Oh, so it's like Spain,
mate. You're seeing 2-3-year-olds running around at 1 o'clock in the morning, like at restaurants, and you're eating, and it's like what is going on here? Like, and everything's just meat, like over there. But look, from a technical aspect, just very quickly, look, Lineout Defence as well was awesome. Like I think we took 3 or 4 steals. Actually, one steal in particular led to Jake Gordon's first try. I think when you can put that pressure on the line out and you can, steal ball or disrupt their ball, that's that first phase ball. Because don't forget, it was horrendous conditions, horrendous. Like I think there was a cyclone that came through. Defensively, first time in, I think, all year, out of the 6 games that we played this year, we've had more dominant tackles.
Lynden EXCITED.
Oh, look, Angus Bell, mate. Look, only his second game back. Look, I played against his father, Mark Bell, like Belly, like one of the characters of rugby union, man. Like this is back in the 90s, right? Like he's one of those players that, he's old school amateur, but it's great to see Angus Bell.
I have to say, just to interrupt you, JP, you guys are not massively innovative with your nicknames, are you? Belly, Roffy,
JP.
Berkey.
Is that right, Marshy? Is that right, Marshy?
Not true.
Oh, no, mate, no, these are only nicknames that you can sort of say, but yeah. So great to see Angus Bellback. Look, and
him and Tupou together as well. That's a game changer.
Look, it's creating depth, right? Like you have to be like Tizano. Wow, this kid, third test. Look, he did all the unassuming work, like the tough tackles, hasn't missed a tackle or something, some crazy stat that he's done like in 3 games, like 50-odd tackles, and hasn't missed one. But his jackling where he turned over 3 crucial penalties. We can see a little bit of confidence. He's took a little bit out of the belief cup. We're seeing like Harry Wilson come back in at 8. Gleeson coming like back from injury as well, that came off the bench. Like, because obviously Harry Wilson now is the captain, Rob Valentini. Like, you're getting depth in positions, and like, let's take Fraser
It's
McWright.
like 23 guys in one Belief Cup.
Oh, mate, I'm telling you, man, the Belief Cup is like, we used to say, like, you're putting a bit of extra petrol or putting money in the bank, and you're just depositing money in, and you're waiting for that withdrawal one day. And that's when it comes down to the 80th minute. And that's what I'm saying. There was a lot to like about that performance, because we played for 80 minutes. Like, what I've been saying is, like, if we can play for 80 minutes, then like that, but it's only one game. Like, that now needs to be consistently done over time. But but when you do that, it's then creating depth as well, like those players. And Hamish Stewart was our 15th debutant this year. 15th. Like, he's like, isn't that incredible? Like, mate, if you wouldn't have played, how many years you played where you had 15 debutants in 1 year?
I think probably the only time you'd ever experience that would be World Cup year, when you're basically taking 2 full squads, aren't you? Or old school tours where
Yes.
you go on an old school tour and there's a few injuries, and you might get a few players making their debut because it's arduous touring with lots of games. But no, that's really unprecedented, to be fair. It would be very rare that that's happened. 15 debuts in a calendar year. We're only halfway through the year.
We're only 6 games in. Like, yeah, correct. Right. Like, yeah, mate. And look, you know, we touched on it last week about selection, right? And like giving him a bit of time. And look, that's what time will do for him. Is like, let's take Fraser McWright and Tizzano, right? Here's this young kid, Tizzano, 3rd test, and his stats are ridiculous. Like, in terms of, you know, missed tackles, tackling, his jackling on the weekend. And then you've got someone like Fraser McWright, who I believe, again, can be one of the best 7s in the world. My God, he's not only a great jackler, great tackler, but it's his attacking play, man.
He's a beast.
He is a very, very good player. But he needs, to get better, he needs a Tizzano. Like, you all need a Byron Callagher to be chasing you, because it makes you better, doesn't it, Marshy? Really, like, all jokes aside,
It's self-motivating. It's like, and that's good. It's healthy, I think. And when you balance out a squad, you know, you need competitiveness within the squad. I think that's the biggest strength of the Springboks at the moment. You know, they have so many players that can command a starting jersey across the board, that they're all fighting for a position to start, or even in the 23. So they've got basically 2 teams, which they showed against Australia. So yeah, no, having that competition is healthy, and it makes sure that you don't become complacent as a player.
So going into the second test, JP, does Joe Schmidt stick with the same 23 because he wants to keep filling up the Belief Cup, or does he try and build depth and make a few changes? And what would those changes be?
No, this is where you solidify and you stay with the same 23. Like, this is where what Marshy alluded to last week about selections and nailing down selections. You've had a tough win, an 81-minute performance where you got to reward those players, mate, like, for that. So big week of recovery. Hopefully they actually got to, you know, have a few thousand beers like on Saturday too, man, and away, right? That bonding session, like, where.
Do you think they would have though?
Look, I hope they did, because you've got to enjoy, like, mate, this was a gutsy performance, man. You've got to reward, like, these blokes and go, rightio, let's recover really well, but let's get on the piss, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's have a couple of drinks.
Well, I agree with you. You know, it is part of the game, you know, and getting tight together after going through a test match like that's really important. What I love about rugby is that it does maintain that tradition of, you know, making sure that once the game is finished, there's that respect for your opponent and respect for your opposite. You know, I had a few beers with Tony Brown in the hotel, who's obviously now assistant coach of South Africa, and I said to him, did you boys go in for a few beers with the All Blacks? And he said, yeah, we did. You know, like, they've just battered each other in a dramatic test match where there's been huge emotion, obviously on both sides. One from the losing perspective from the All Blacks, and one from the Springboks who fought back to win a test match. And you can imagine that probably creates a funny vibe, but it doesn't. Like, the players still get together, still have a beer with each other, because you don't get a chance to do it anymore. Like we used to have, didn't we, JP, back in the day?
Yeah.
Test match dinners regularly where you would go in and socialise with the opposition. Well, now because of recovery and the process and getting yourself prepared for the next game, test match dinners no longer exist where you get together with the opposition. So to get to know them, it's got to be after the game in the changing shed. And I was really pleased to see that happened between the Springboks and the All Blacks, because as much as this is the greatest rivalry, there's this greatest respect as well for each other, which is brilliant.
Mate, I think those dinners, they got canned after Case. Like I think I got escorted out of one. Out of one of those test dinners, because I was sitting next to Case Muse, and every time we had a drink, he'd chop it like this one. And I thought I'd keep up with the big unit. Mate, I think I got carried out. But actually, I've got to give a big shout out actually to Case Muse. Like I've been dying to say this in the 2003 Rugby World Cup semi-final when we beat the All Blacks. I'm just going to say that again. But Ben Darwin actually broke his neck and was 4 millimeters off becoming a quadriplegic.
What?
And yeah, like it was horrific the next day seeing him. We were all crying, and Billy Young, myself, and Ben Darwin, and the person who saved his life was Case Muse. So when coming through rugby in the 90s and early 2000s, every front rower was taught the word Mayday. So if you went down into a scrum and you collapsed and something was wrong, you'd scream out Mayday. Now, that word hadn't been used for a very, very long time. I think it was like a 90s thing. And anyway, in the semi-final, Ben Darwin felt something like break and screamed the word Mayday. Now, this is in the heat of passion, and normally 999,999 times out of a million, you would just keep going. But Case Muse heard it and stopped. And if it wasn't for Case Muse stopping, Ben Darwin would be a quadriplegic today. So I've got to give a big shout out to Case.
Yeah, that's massive, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. Like it's too easy just to be stuck in the moment and feeling like obviously at that stage he had the wood on his opponent, but instead of pushing through, when he actually heard that, he responded and saved him. Obviously being a quadriplegic. So
crazy.
Yeah, it's a real story. Far out. It's quite sobering to hear it.
Mate, it was pretty. It was really surreal actually. The next day, going to see him in hospital, right? Because he'd just gotten to the pinnacle too of the tight head prop, and I actually thought he was in the mould of Olo Brown. To be honest, Marshy, I thought his scrummaging, it was just his scrummaging that was left. And but yeah, sorry for going off to
no, that's
Case.
Amazing.
But
that's
I had to give Case Muse a shout out. I loved playing against Case, loved having a beer with him. He would put me under the table every single time, man. Chop it. I would look.
Well,
that was.
I was just about to say, you obviously didn't enjoy having a beer with him because you've been carried out of a test match dinner.
No, I did. I even got the tap. Jeremy, you're not going out. Oh yeah, of course I'm not.
Well, we're going to leave it there now. Otherwise, JP would talk us about the Wallabies all the way to the next game and maybe even to the Bledisloe.
Mate, here comes the Bledisloe. Bring it back.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening.
You still know what it looks like?
Let the banter build. We've got weeks until it's coming up. Good luck for this weekend's players, and thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to check out the description of this episode if you want to get your NordVPN as well, and you can watch the games from anywhere.